So in this video, we're getting ready to review how to solve a two-step equation. And in this situation, it's going to take you two things to solve for the unknown. Now, you've already watched a video here on your one-step equations, and what all of these have in common is that they have either a coefficient or a constant or a denominator. And now we're going to be looking at problems where we see two of those things. So for the first problem, I've just already got the work done for you. We identify here that we have 3/4 x plus 2 is equal to -7. So the coefficient would be our 3/4, and the constant is this +2. So what we're going to do first is, since it's a +2, we're going to subtract 2 on both sides, and that's going to cancel out the constant. And then I bring down my 3/4 x. I have -7 minus 2, and that's -9, so that's what's left over. Now, because my coefficient is a fraction of 3/4, we're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal 4/3, and that cancels out over here. 12 divided by 12 would be 1, and 1 times x is just x. And over here, you have a couple of options. You could do the 9 times 4, which is 36. Now divide that by 3. Or you can do 9 divided by 3 is 3. Now times 4 would be 12. Another thing to note is that we have a negative number times a positive, so our answer here is going to be -12. So when your coefficient is a fraction, you're multiplying by the reciprocal. If you have a coefficient and a constant, you're going to get rid of the constant first, then get rid of the coefficient, and of course here we have that x would be 12. All right, I'm going to erase that now and move on to the next problem here. So in this problem, we have 15 equals 5 minus x. Now this might look like a one-step, but it's one of those special two steps. It's squiggled kind of like you already saw on the previous page. We had these two that were special two-step equations. And so here, because the coefficient is this -1 and our constant is the 5, we're going to start by getting rid of the 5 on both sides. So 5 minus 5 is 0. And we still have this -1. Don't forget that if you have a minus x, you technically have a -1 with your x, so that's the coefficient. And over here, 15 minus 5 is 10. Now when we divide both sides by that -1, we're going to get -10 for x. So this problem is technically a two-step because the coefficient is negative, and we want the coefficient to be a +1. So we have to divide both sides by this negative for this coefficient to be a +1. All right. Now with this next problem, this one's a little bit different because we don't have a coefficient with our x. This time we have a denominator. So this problem's a little bit different. We're going to start by the -8 as our constant. Because it's negative, we're going to add 8 to both sides, and the constant cancels out. Now another thing to be very careful of right here is that this negative, we want to treat it as if it's down here with the denominator. So instead of it being out front like that, when you write your new step, I'm going to highly recommend that you put it down here with your denominator to now catch that if you have x divided by 3, we want to multiply both sides by the denominator. And so then the -3 times 3 right there, that cancels out when you divide it. And over here, the 5 times the -3 is where I got this -15. So anytime you see a denominator, you're multiplying both sides by it. And if you have a subtraction sign out front, you want to treat that subtraction sign with the denominator. And then when you multiply it, we don't forget about it. Okay? Now for the last one, we are back to having a coefficient and a constant. So I can bring this back to identify. And for the coefficient, it's a -4. And the constant is this 18, the number all by itself. So since it's a +18, we're going to subtract on both sides. That cancels out here. We bring down our -4x. And on this side, 10 minus 18 is -8. Now because my coefficient's -4, I'm going to divide it by itself. So that's a +1x on this side. And a negative divided by a negative here would be a +2. So for this one, we get that x equals 2. So now that covers the review for how to solve these two-step equations. And we reviewed what to do if you see a coefficient that's a fraction. We reviewed what to do if you see a coefficient that's -1. We reviewed here what to do if you see a denominator, and especially if there's a negative with it. And I feel like this last one was probably the one that you were most likely remembering how to do. Now with this next row of problems, you'll see that I've got the first three blocked out because I would assume that you're going to know how to do those and you're going to do those now for practice. But the last one in this group over here, I wanted to review the fact that you'll see that the denominator this time is down here and our constant is a part of the numerator. That's the difference. In this problem up here that I'm boxing in blue, the constant is this -8 and x is all by itself in the numerator. Now for this new problem that I'm focusing on here in red, you'll notice that the constant of -2 is in the numerator. So this time our first step is to get rid of the 3. Think about it. When I say this, I've got that x minus 2 is divided by 3. So to undo that, the divide by 3, that's going to be the first thing that we undo. Okay? So right here, you're going to multiply both sides by the denominator of 3. That cancels out, and x minus 2 is all by itself. Now over here, you've got -4 times 3 is -12. Now you've got that some number minus 2 should equal -12, so you're just going to add 2 to both sides, and that's how we get x is -10. Now think about this. I've got up here, what I'm basically doing is I'm taking the x minus 2 and letting it be this blue circle, and I'm saying that that thing divided by 3 should be a -4. So my circle up here, this numerator, this x minus 2, that thing divided by 3 should be a -4. So this thing right here, if I multiply by the 3 and multiply by the 3, that numerator, what we're saying is that this numerator should equal this -12. So this numerator is the x minus 2. And that's what we have left here in the work. Now you're just going to add 2 and add 2, and that's how we get that x is -10. So when you see a problem like this, where the constant is a part of the numerator, the first step you take is to actually get rid of the denominator. Then you can get rid of the constant, okay? Now, once again, you're going to see as I continue to scroll here that I have not shown the work for the next set of problems because all of these you're going to try on your own and the answers are going to go into your Google form. But I did want to review down here now some of the translating with the 2 steps, all right? Now, the first thing that I wanted to remind you guys of is to scan for than, and anytime you see the word than, you're going to box it, and all the stuff after it comes first. Now, of course, anytime you see the equals or the is equal to, you've got that part taken care of right from the beginning. That's going to be pretty easy. But now when we see that we have 11 more than the product of 5 and h, we want the product of 5 and h to come first. Now show me 11 more than that. Okay? Now, if you were to solve this one, you would get a decimal. You would subtract the 11, which would be -33. And then when we divide by 5, we would get a decimal. So fractions and decimals are fair game. And of course, I wanted to review here that product of 5 and h. You've got the product right there with your coefficient, 5 times h. Now it's increased by 11 till 11 more, and that equals the -22. Now we have another than here, and then we also have the is equal to, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of the is equal to 1. And this part says 2 less than the quotient of x and 5. 2 less than the quotient of x and 5. So we have a than. We're going to have the quotient of x and 5, and since x comes first, it's in the numerator, so we've got x over 5. Now show me 2 less than that by subtracting 2. So x divided by 5 minus 2 is 1. All right, now when we were to solve this, you would add 2 to get a 3 and then multiply by the 5. So you're going to add 2, then multiply by 5. This one, if we added 2, we'd get 3, and then times 5, we'd get x equals 15 for the second one. All right, for number 3. We've got that 7 is equal to, so that part we're going to translate first. We've got 7 is equal to, and then we have half a number k increased by 3. So you've got half of your k, and that's going to get increased by 3. So half is the coefficient of k, then increased by 3 for the constant. When we solve this one here, you're going to subtract the 3 to get a 4, and then you'd have 4 equals 1/2 k. And a lot of people look at that and think the answer is 2, but be careful, since this is a fraction, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal, times 2. And we're going to get 8 equals k for this one. This one is going to be 8 equals k. All right, and now we're on number 4. So we've got that 9 is going to get increased by the quotient of z and 4, and that equals 14. So we've got equals 14 taken care of. Boom. And now 9 increased by the quotient of, so 9 increased by, and then z over 4. Notice these problems in green don't have a than. The ones that have a than I did in red. All right, and now we're on the last one. We've got that we have -3 minus 3/5 a number m equals -13. So here's the equals -13. So equals -13. Now we have -3 minus 3/5 a number m. So this is one where your coefficient is a fraction, kind of like up here where you had the 1/2. And so to solve this one here, if we were to have to solve it, you're going to add your 3, and careful, you have a -3/5 m right here, a -3/5 with the m, and over here this equals -10. Then to solve, you're going to multiply both sides by this reciprocal, so times a -5/3 and times a -5/3. So we're going to get here that m equals, and we have this 10 times 5 is 50, and 50 divided by 3 would be 50/3. A negative times a negative is a positive, and if I take out the calculator, we can do 50 divided by 3 to get the decimal. It'll be 16.6 repeating. So m here is the 16.6 repeating, and I'll just put the line over the 6 to show that it keeps repeating. And that concludes the video on solving and translating two-step equations. Thank you.